corruption. We have absolute corruption that people go to jail on. Can't we reform that first? Can't we go to the American people with clean hands before we ask them to make further sacrifice? And second of all, as principle, I think the worst thing we do in bad economic times is raise taxes.
Not right now, but over the long run, you're not going to solve a $9 trillion gap without revenues, are you?
I think you can reform Medicare and Social Security and not have to do that if you truly reform it. Look at what eats up a greater and greater percent of the federal budget, the Social Security and Medicare.
You've also pledged to help to work with the president on preserving our national parks. You're here with Secretary Salazar, and one of the things you're having a hearing on this weekend is the threat of climate change to our national parks. I was in Glacier National Park a couple of years ago with Governor Schweitzer.
We had over 100 glaciers. Now we're down to a couple of dozen, and by 2025, 2035, at the rate that they've been declining, there'll be no glaciers in Glacier National Park.
What's the threat here?
I think the threat is serious here. We've seen increased temperatures, which has had impact on the wildlife, on the flora and fauna, on the Colorado River itself, which we are seeing less and less of. We are in serious drought conditions. Our parks have very fragile ecology here. And frankly, when you're in this driest area anyway, then they're even more fragile. So I think the impact of climate change on our national parks is, well, you know, they're going to have to change the name of Glacier National Park because the glaciers have gone away.
In the past, you've been supportive of legislation to deal with greenhouse gas emissions, with cap and trade. What about the current legislation that's coming out of the House now moving to the Senate? They've met a lot of your objections about not giving away the allowances. Is this something now you can support?
Well, to support a 1,400-page piece of legislation to start with is always difficult for me. But I believe that the only way we're going to truly reduce greenhouse gas emissions effectively is through nuclear power. We have got to build 100 nuclear power plants in the next 20 years. We can do that. Right now, the administration's position is against storage, and they're against recycling of spent nuclear fuel. I can't support a genuine reduction in greenhouse gas emissions unless nuclear power is a key part of it.
But you've been for it in the past.
I've been for and nuclear power, assuming that nuclear power would be a key part of it. I mean, you can't get there from here. The only country that's really making its Kyoto goals is France, where 80% of their electricity is generated by nuclear power.
But you'd be willing to go along with cap and trade if it were part of a comprehensive deal that included more support for nuclear power?
Well, that would have to be part of it. And second of all, in any 1,400-page piece of legislation, you put in a lot of special deals for a lot of special interests. We know what happened there. The bazaar was open in the House of Representatives. So obviously, I would have to want to do away with a whole lot of that. But I think climate change is real, and I would be glad to sit down and try to work, as I have in the past, across the aisle on this issue.
And we're seeing all these condors fly around the canyon while we've been talking. Are you going to make time for a hike while you're out here?
We're going to hike later on, and these condors, former Secretary of Interior Bruce Babbitt had a big role to play. As you know, then many not. They had just about disappeared. They took a group of them into captivity and released them here in Arizona, and now they're doing pretty well.
Thank you for bringing us here.